I'm David Lord, the host of the Insight series of podcasts from HReSource. These are a series of podcasts that are all about the business of business. And we meet some absolutely fascinating individuals who've got stories to tell that you're just going to want to hear. I am absolutely delighted to welcome to the next episode of our HReSource podcast somebody who has a passion about a topic which is actually close to an awful lot of our hearts right now. It's recruitment. I know there's a lot more to Sohn than just recruitment, and I'm sure he's going to tell us a bit about that, and we'll get to that. But I think when we get into the meat of our discussion today, it will form around his main role at the moment as CEO of Recruitment.com, a fascinating business which I am really looking forward to learn about. So over to you, Evan. Welcome to the podcast.
David, thank you so much for having me on your show. And, it's really an honor to be not just on your show, but really to be the CEO of Recruitercom. It's really at the right place at the right time.
You should say so. We're going to get to that. But first and foremost, I'm always really fascinated. I love people. I'm fascinated by the stories, the journeys, the how we got into these things. When I was somebody, people would always ask you the question, family gatherings, and they say, well, what's David going to be? And it was 6. And I always wanted to be a doctor. That didn't work out. But what about young Evan? What did young Evan want to do? When you were at kindergarten, did you have an answer for those questions?
Yeah, so I had been, I think when I was a little kid, I really wanted to be a teacher. I really was motivated by some really fantastic teachers that I had in elementary school. And the way they interacted, the way they moved me intellectually, educationally, and I really thought I was going to be a teacher when I was a kid. But there was a really fun story. I'm not a sports guy at all. I follow nothing. But when I was in first grade or second grade, and I'm kind of old, we used to flip cards, right? So that was like a game, certainly in the US, you would flip baseball cards. And I had friends that they knew every color of every team, and they would see the name. Oh, it's this person. Oh, he's on this team, and it's the color. And so what I would do is I would actually stake them every day with like a handful, this much, a couple of fingerful of cards, and they would flip for me during the day. They'd bring back all their winnings, and I would give them a piece of the action. Now, I didn't know percentages, so it was probably like first or second grade. But I think my parents then knew I was probably going to be, an entrepreneur at some level or another. So I thought that was actually a funny story.
It's the entrepreneur. Do you know what I used to do? We're not a million miles away from each other. We had sticker cards, football, they were called Panini. So and in 1970, I want to say 1978, I've actually got the album here. It's the very first one they produced, and I filled it. And you had to buy bubble gum. And in the bubblegum packets came the stickers that you put into your football thing. And it was mad. Everybody was crazy for it. In the very early stages of that, when it was just taking off, I decided that I would create my own stickers. So I made up footballers, gave them names, gave them football clubs that were
fantastic,
and sold them. But at the time, 2p a card, which was actually a packet of crisps, would.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Crazy. That's just brought that memory back. Yeah. And so it's a similar sort of thing. The baseball thing obviously was a great football, exactly the same.
Right. And then I worked through college. I was actually a programmer through college. So
how does that work? So you worked your way through.
I was going to school like 2 days and 2 nights per week, and actually working 3 days a week. Right. So I was working about 30 hours a week as a programmer. And I was doing some really interesting projects. I was actually at one point in time, I was actually getting on a plane like every Tuesday to fly to Boston for a client. And like, what's your job? Look, I got to go home and study. I got like tests and stuff. And then I took a new venture management class in college. And the project from that class actually became my first company. So I started a company right out of college. I was in the NYU Business School, started right out of school at 21 years old. I took 2 engineers that I had worked with while in college at the company, and we started a company. I was 21, one was 35, the other was 40, something like that.
So was this Logix?
Logix, yeah, Logix, yeah. In those days, like anything with an X was like really cool.
Oh yeah,
That was really, really cool. Had I known, we would have kept the domain name all these years,
Ooh,
but
yeah.
that would have been really interesting. And the company really was really in mobile technology. So mobile devices, mobile applications. We really saw that the use of these palm tops, and this sort of predates, all the things we see now,
Smartphone.
all those things really was going to invade the professional work life. And how could we leverage these tools, not just as an organizer and as a calculator, but really to improve processes. And we got involved with like TD Ameritrade on the trading side. We did one of the first wireless email systems way back when.
Wow.
And we did field force automation and then Salesforce automation. So really ended up automating the pharmaceutical Salesforce industry. So in a variety of ways.
You put in place.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. I actually got involved with like the FDA getting approval for signature capture, like the PDMA. Like it was just really, really interesting stuff. And in 1998, we really grew the company very, very quickly. And in 1998, really saw that the pharmaceutical companies and the industry, it was getting easier to do what we were doing. Like a lot of why we had this advantage, it was hard to do it. And the technology was catching up to make it easier. So we really recognized, look, we have this great market presence. We had like 80% market cap, 20% market capture, 80% of the total market. Like it was really at a very well position. So either we're going to raise money to like expand the business or get acquired. And we decided in 1998 to get acquired, sold off two of the areas of the business that we already had, and then got acquired by Dun & Bradstreet in December of 98. Then stayed there for the appropriate period of time, left, got pulled out by a venture capital company, come join a company. And I've really been the fortune to work with some really incredibly talented people, from the smartest folks on the East Coast to the, smartest folks on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I've been involved in companies that got acquired by Verifone, by Message Labs, by Symantec. Most recently, I was out in Silicon Valley working with a company called Point, Point. It was a smart terminal payment provider that got acquired by GoDaddy. And then just to make the long story a little shorter, in my spare time, I had a brother who died in 1993, and he was a Wall Street trader. And his name was Sohn. And when he died, his boss and friends and I started the Sohn Foundation, the Sohn Conference Foundation. They had this idea for a conference series. And we really launched the first, in his name, launched really the first sort of hedge fund conference. So everything you see now where there's a 15-minute conference, that these guys invented that whole thing. Like back in 95 was the first conference.
Crazy. And I was going to come on to that because I have I tried to do my best professional job, hat on, as being a podcaster, do a bit of research, obviously, and I was absolutely knocked out by the amount of money that you've raised.
Yeah, it's now close to about 100 million.
26 a year. So how much have you done now?
We've done about 100 million.
Wow.
On a global basis for pediatric cancer and related diseases. So what happened was, so the New York one, the big event is in New York. It was in May, and again, pre-pandemic, we'll have to decide what actually happens. We've been virtual, but like some of the incredible calls, financial calls, have been at this conference. So the decimation of Lehman Brothers in 2008 by David Einhorn at the HReSource conference. Herbalife, which was Bill Ackman's whole short thing with Carl Icahn. I introduced him at that event. Again, another Sohn conference. And we've had a number of these. Shamath Papaya's Long on Amazon a bunch of years ago, again at the HReSource conference. So it's it's really been a thrill. And I think in my brother's memory, it now expanded into now 11 other cities. 11 cities, 10 countries, 5 continents. So there's one in Australia, there's one in Israel, there's one in Hong Kong, London, Monaco, Geneva, Sao Paulo, Canada, just amazing. And all the money stays local.
Yeah.
So, but is focused on, pediatric, either cancer or related childhood diseases.
It's just amazing. And to
Thank you.
think what you've been able to create out of something that was so tragic for somebody to lose their life at such a young age. Was he about 29? He was
one day short of 29. So this is really his 20. It's been 28 years. So, this is really a difficult year for the family. Like he will now be, has passed almost as, by the end of this year, as long as he's been alive, as long as he was alive.
Yeah.
The statement I would often make is, and we've done really great work around the New York area, and beyond, in terms of actual impact that we've made to children's lives. And it's been amazing watching the impact that we had to science, to families, to genomic research, we work very closely with the Rockefeller University Medical Center. So it's really the impact that we're making really in his memory has really just been truly spectacular. And again, just surrounded by phenomenal people, my partners in the foundation, the founders of the foundation, all the scientists were involved. Just really, I've really been blessed to really work with fantastic people.
The work you guys are doing that is helping to support the advancements that are being made in this field right now, which of course is so important. I think we run a Stand Up to Cancer charity in the UK, which runs the stat that 1 in 2 of us is going to get cancer at some point in our life. So I mean, it's just endemic, isn't it? We are going to face it. Every family is going to face a situation.
Yeah, but not to be gloom and doom, but the actual amount of money that goes to pediatric cancer research pales relative to the rest of cancer research. So we really thought that, how could we make an impact? We're making we make an impact because we're very, very focused in our grant making. And look, when grandma has cancer or grandpa, it's terrible and it's very sad and it affects, a few people. When a child has cancer, it affects the entire family, siblings, it's really at a, and again, I'm not diminishing the loss of adult cancer one bit, but having seen this firsthand, not just in my own family, but in other families, it really is, the impact is very long and very long lasting.
It's tremendous work. That's all credit to you for that.
Thank you.
One of the things that I was going to ask you about, you gave us a wonderful outline of your trajectory, and I don't think, I mean, I've held the role of CEO of a law firm and as an interim executive. And I guess from my personal perspective, I didn't feel that I would be in a position to do that unless I'd got some miles under the clock to do that. At what point do you think, or did you think at age 21 that you were ready to take on the role of a CEO and take charge? Or when did you actually feel that you fitted that suit? You actually were comfortable in those shoes?
About a year ago. I really
I can relate.
So really about a year ago, I think that when I took the CEO role at Recruiter.com, and we could talk about that in a second, that's really when I said, okay, this is probably the right time. I was naive. I knew nothing at 21, really, and I'm glad it was successful and the whole bit, but I really knew nothing. I read books all day long. Tom Peters was my part, really, it was like very, very difficult. You make a lot of mistakes. You make them quickly. That's a good Tom Peters rule. I'm aging myself because I don't think anyone's quoted him probably in years, but he would say, make mistakes, but just make them quickly. Right. Aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire. So I think that was, really an interesting early experience. And then I really got to watch interesting CEOs and the way they behave. And, you pick something up from everybody. And, I always tell my kids, if you're not learning something from everybody, then you're not listening hard enough. And there's something to learn from everybody, and I had a CEO at Verifone, Paul Gallant, and, he introduced the expression, you want to be a customer's first phone call. And I talk about that at work all the time. At work all the time, I want to be a client's first phone call. And I know I'm successful when I am a client's first phone call. And in the recruiting world, no one was ever a client's first phone call. It's almost, and again, I'm not poo-pooing it, and I really don't want to make a generalization, but often it was a little bit more commoditized. And I'm like, I want to be a client's first phone call. When they have an issue, I want to be the call that they're making. And I'm not talking about, executive level recruiting. I'm talking about major talent acquisition challenges. And if you could be, doesn't matter what company you're in, if you could be a client's first phone call, if you're part of their solution or their problem process, that's a whole other level of relationship. That's a partnership.
Yeah, it's a different conversation altogether, isn't it?
It's just absolutely,
Moves it away from the transactional.
And by the way, and you want that with your own team members, I don't want to say employees, the people that you work with. You want to say, look, I have a problem. Let's talk about it. And I don't want you to think that, I hope you're not bringing me your own laned, in your own lane solution that's going to only benefit you. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, when you're a client's first customer, you want to be their partner. You want to tell them what works, what doesn't work, et cetera. Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing some work at the moment on the professional services sector specifically, but I'm looking at other areas as well, because I've been the CEO of a law firm, and I've interned with law firms. And I did quite a bit of reading during the lockdown periods, and read the John Doerr book, Measure What Matters, and I've looked into in more depth at the whole OKR process, right, and love it.
So I'll tell you something. I spent about 3 years out in Silicon Valley and learned a ridiculous amount there. And they're 3,000 miles away from here in New York, but it's a different culture. And I understand. I'm beginning to understand why Silicon Valley works. I've been reading a lot about it, blitzscaling, and all the other books that they sort of created there. But there's a really serious theme that comes out of Silicon Valley, which is a trend starts with a single data point. Right. So in the East Coast, if a customer called up complaining, you would say, okay, we got one complaint. Let's see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we got another complaint. Okay, so that's 2 complaints, but we got 6 other phone calls. So that's 2 out of 6. That's pretty good. Let's see what happens the next day. 3 people complain. Yeah, but we got 9 other phone calls. So let's see if this happens tomorrow. Yeah. And on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, the first time a person called and complained, the assumption is that thousands of people are going to call and complain. So let's go solve this problem. Let's go solve this problem right now. Yeah. And what that allows them to do, and it's a great, is to really get ahead of that hockey puck as fast as possible. Another US expression, right? You want to be where the hockey puck is going, not where it is. And if you start to say, gee, the hockey puck's moving in that direction, okay, then it's going to keep going in that direction. So let's actually jump ahead and really get ahead of that hockey puck. And it's really a great lesson from Silicon Valley. I learned a lot of others, but I think I look at my experiences as really a culmination of now where I am today. I'm about to be 54 years old, so a little bit more mature. And I think the primary difference, David, between CEO at 54 and CEO at 21 is I really trust my gut much better today than I did in 21. Yeah. I was always assertive. I was always open-minded. My mother, God rest her soul, used to say, just because you say something with authority doesn't mean you're always right. I've been called a benevolent dictator. I've been involved in schools. I was the president of my kid's school, and other areas. But you rely more on your gut when you're 54. You just have this. You certainly have a better sense of who you are and what you're good at now than I was at 21. And I think the other thing that that I like to think is that I'm better at seeing the best in people. Right. So my goal as a CEO is really to figure out what makes a person fantastic. What are they awesome at? What are they great at? And how do I put them in a role where they are going to be fantastic? At 21, you got this ego, right? But at 54, I want you to be, I want this podcast to be amazing because I want you to be amazing.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Thank you very much.
You're helping it along the way nicely. Thank you very much. What I was going to say is there's something good in everybody. I mean, that's a philosophy that I took with me in there is something you can find, and people tend to find a negative, or they overthink situations, or they see problems where there aren't problems until they actually get to understand and know somebody. And I'm a big believer in EQ and empathy, because it can be distinctly lacking in some organizations, and it spreads through the culture of an organization.
Yeah. No, I would agree. So we have our own core values at Recruiter.com. And it's really be bold, be an owner, be bold, and be human. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So be an owner, take responsibility for your own destiny, own a problem. It's not just about seeing a problem. You see a problem, you get involved with that problem. Be bold, take risks, fail quickly. Don't be afraid to raise up and take a shot on goal. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So be bold. And then finally, be human, be respectful, appreciate that everyone has something to offer a conversation, be collaborative. So I think when you look at those three core values, that really is what we all should be striving for, right? Be an owner, take responsibility for your own destiny, take risks, be in the front of the class. Don't be sitting in the back of the class, be bold. And then finally, at the same time, there's a human element to what we need to do, right? There's greatness in everybody, and we have to find out what that is and make everyone better.
And what we're discovering right now, let's bring this to the Recruiter.com role and the market that you are in the midst of right now, which it's crazy times with the backfill of jobs that need to be filled.
Right.
And we are mirroring, there's a very similar situation across the pond in the UK and in Europe that there is in the US. A lot of thought and talk in the UK is about Brexit and decisions that were taken, but I'm not so sure that is the case. I think there's been a mindset, and I think there's a term that you use called the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
And can you just explain that to me? Because that's not.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, no problem. We actually have an article coming out called "The Changing World of Work." I actually gave a keynote about it last week at a conference. Look, anytime there's been any sort of macro climate economic event, you can go back to World War II, you can go back to Black Monday, October 19th, 1987. You can go back to the dot-com bust in 98. You can go back to Y2K. You can go back to, every of these events, the subprime mortgage debacle, every one of these events have actually caused something to happen that's never returned, right? So it was entrepreneurship that was really created by Black Monday. 1990s and the recession of 92 really caused outsourced call centers to really take off because I want to reduce my cost of labor. We could look at, when did Amazon Web Services really start? Sort of post subprime mortgage issue. I want to cut savings. I need to cut my variable costs or those costs, et cetera. Yeah. So I think that these things were always these things were already happening. I think the duration of an employee at a company has been decreasing decade over decade. Right? Our grandparents had one job. Our fathers might have had two. You would have 3 or 4, and you would tell your child, hey, make sure you stay at this job for at least 2 years, because you don't want to look like you're a flight risk. We were called job hoppers. That was a bad thing. The reality is, I now call this, we're in the job hopper economy. Yeah. 60% of all millennials have no problem leaving a job within the first year. It's a recent statistic. So all of this bent up, I've been sitting around, same job. I want to get out. I want to experience new things. And there are so many reasons for it, but there's a reason that in the US in August, 4.3 million people quit their jobs. Yes. So this is, while it seems like it's episodic, this is not. Episodic is the fact that there's 9 million people unemployed in the less talented labor space. That's episodic. We'll get that back. We'll figure that out. What's not episodic, what's systemic, is that the average tenure at a job is now changing forever. Yeah. And I'm generalizing, but I'm not, right? Well, I am not generalizing.
I actually wrote a book on generational diversity.
Yeah, that's right.
It was published by Wilmington, and this was aimed at the professional service sector as well. But the facts are true for everybody. I looked at the average tenure and the data and what's behind the generations, and the older generation would consider a job would be minimum 10 years for the average tenure. And as you're working through the generations from, I'm Gen X, and when you be working the way, and you're Gen X, and as we work our way back through the generations to millennials and to Gen Z, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
Right.
Quite right. It's just something. It's a process happening that's been accelerated.
It's an accelerating. So I'll give you an analogy. 2 years ago, so October 21st, 2019, you saw a resume of a 30-year-old who had been at the same company for 10 years. They graduated, they've been at the same company for 10 years. You and I, 2 years ago, would describe that person as committed, loyal, steadfast, climbing the ropes. Yeah. To October 2021, describe that person: risk averse, not willing to stretch their own horizons. Yeah. I heard the word lazy, so now again, we're generalizing, but if this isn't about Evan and David, This is about the 25-year-old who's been at the same company for 5 years or 4 or 5 years. Now they're saying to themselves, do I keep staying at this company and look stale, or do I leave? And the reality is their fathers now or their parents are going to say, look, you've been at that company for 5 years. You got to move. What's your next experience like? So and by the way, so let's look at it this way. I could work from anywhere. I could hire from anywhere. I could interview anytime I want, because interview is now a video screen, right? So there's none of this. I got to leave the office for a day. And there's a talent shortage in high skilled labor, and there's no stigma in leaving. Well, if there's no stigma in leaving, I can interview anytime I want. Oh, by the way, there's no geographic undesirable roles anymore, right? The number of roles that I had to turn down because I didn't want to move are tremendous. So think about anyone that wants to hire David. If I want to hire David, I could hire David. I don't care if I'm in Timbuktu or anywhere. If I want to hire David, I could hire David, because there's just no geographical issues anymore. And again, I'm not talking about the factory work. I'm talking about the knowledge, skilled worker, et cetera. There's a skill set. Actually, if someone wants to hire you, it doesn't matter where it is. So every candidate today is more valuable than they were a year ago. From the CEO to the blockchain developer to the factory worker willing to walk into a factory. So it just, because it's so much easier now, why not look at new opportunities? Why not do it? David, we used the expression not too long ago that looking for a job is a full-time job, right? I'm quitting my job because I want to find a full-time job. I want to find a job, and it's a full-time job looking for a job because it was hard. This isn't hard. This is easy. No one's commuting. Everyone has an extra 2 hours a day. This is just so much easier now. So yes, this great resignation is happening because it's easy to happen, and it's not going away. We're going to be moving into this work. Now it's work from anywhere. That's going to morph to hire from anywhere. There's no stigma of leaving roles. So I just think we're into this really crazy job market where to find David now, if I want to hire David, I used to have to interview. Let's say I had to have a pool of 50 people to find David, right? Because once I find you, there's a limited number, there's a limitation to it, et cetera. I might have to look at 300 people to find David now. Why? Because I have more opportunities, but so do they, right? So it's just changed the way we actually look at things. I remember I was the interim interim head of marketing for the Americas for what became Semantic Message Labs. And, I was interim because they bought my company and now they were going to do a full search, et cetera. And the chief marketing officer is one of the co-founders, calls me and goes, Evan, good news and bad news. The good news is it's your job. The bad news is we went looking and all 3 headhunters came back with your name. So can you imagine, because if you're in the New York area and you were talking about security and marketing, I was the guy. Can you imagine that now in 21? I am so underqualified to be that role. There's so many more people more qualified to be that. So I just think that the rate of which people are going to leave jobs, and, this is the golden age for talent acquisition. So, I could leave you at that line, right? If everything is now, there are more people that need to be hired, that means the top of your funnel needs to be much, much wider in terms of candidates that you're looking at. And at the end of the day here, no matter how many commercials you see on Indeed and ZipRecruiter, no one is getting hired without speaking to somebody. Recruiting is a human interaction. Now, unfortunately, we probably spend way too much time finding the people and not enough time speaking to them. And whether that's them or the client, et cetera, we are out to change that model and give you, 20% of the time should be spent actually finding people using our tools, and 80% of the time should be spent actually having conversation. Because now more than ever, you need to make that match, relationship.
My better understanding of your company now is that it's helping to re-engineer and in terms of timing, perfect, because of the scale of what's happening right now. The recruitment industry needs to change to be able to accommodate the situation it finds itself in, and this has been mentioned for decades about the need for the recruitment industry to change. Well, now it hasn't really got a choice, has it?
No, that old model of paying a headhunter, 30% of a salary for someone that's going to last, 2 years, that's broken. Now, I think it exists for very high level roles and, the senior vice president of whatever it is, that's fine. But when you need 100 Java developers quickly, that's just not the right way to do it. And you can't scale your own team fast enough. And the reality is, we've been outsourcing elements of our businesses for a long time now, right? Whether it's legal, we might have an in-house counsel, but if we're having an SEC violation, we're bringing an SEC attorney. Yeah, if we're buying a company, we're going to bring an M&A attorney. We don't just pretend that our general counsel knows everything. In fact, that would be kind of silly. We all go to a doctor, right? We all have an internist that we use, but if we have an eye problem, we're going to go to an eye doctor. And we don't say, oh, by the way, I churned my eye doctor. No, I used the eye doctor. He delivered the value that he needed, and then I'm done with him. And we're doing this on-demand thing. By the way, our auditors on demand, our call centers on demand, our web services on demand. There's so many things that we've been doing on demand. And by the way, the gig economy has been growing. Why isn't talent acquisition, in order to handle the ebbs and flows, the pandemic levels and the non-pandemic levels? And that's what we're really doing. We're reinventing the recruiting industry, allowing companies of all sizes to augment their hiring, whether it's the CEO or the global head of talent who says, look, I need a recruiter of this size that looks like this, that's got this level of experience for the next 3 months, and pay them for the time. Pay them like you're paying an accountant, like you're paying a lawyer, like you're paying a doctor, paying for their time. And when it's done, thank you.
So how does it actually work? To walk us through a typical example of.
Yeah. So companies come to our website. We have a job board. They could just post up a job for a recruiter, all about talent acquisition. They could say, hey, I'm looking for 4 recruiters. I'm looking for recruiters, et cetera. We have a number of different job boards. If they're looking for our tools, if they're looking for pipeline, they sign up for our tools. We have incredible AI, artificial intelligence, search and engagement tools with over 160 million indexed profiles, diversity, everything. So just an amazing tool set. We are delivering, our tools, and we have our on-demand recruiters working our tools. So we provide a full service to our clients, and our clients are everything from startup companies to, Fortune 50 companies. And it really depends on what you're looking for. But at the end of the day here, every client that we have needs talent. They either need pipeline of talent, they need more candidates, and they use our tools to find more candidates, or they need more talent acquisition professionals, recruiters in-house, and they're using our tool, our platform, to actually retain those people. A client says they need 3 recruiters, 2 senior level, junior level. There's an hourly rate, and we use our platform. We engage the recruiter. The recruiter work like Upwork or Fiverr. So we're like Fiverr for recruiters, or, tongue in cheek, we're Uber for recruiters. I need a recruiter. I need this type of recruiter with this level of skill set. This person is $100 an hour. You'll pay them $100 an hour. You pay them through the platform, and we take 20%, 20 to 25%, depending on the scope. If you need our tools, we charge on a subscription basis. Combining the two together is incredibly, incredibly powerful.
Do other recruitment agencies should be part of this platform?
Yeah. So our clients include startup companies, high growth companies. Let's call them the sophisticated companies that have lots and lots of hiring needs. And then we work with recruiting firms all day long. So we work with very large recruiting firms that need more recruiters. And then our supply, right, the people actually delivering all the services are independent recruiters. So we only have a few recruiters in-house. Everyone that we use are really your audience. It's the freelance recruiter that's looking for hourly work, and we're bringing them opportunities that they would never get on their own.
That's great. And in terms of the scope of this, is this primarily the US, or are you global?
I think the latest number was 80-20. About 80% of our business is in the US, 20% is outside, but we're getting pulled into a lot of outside opportunities. So it's pretty interesting. In terms of, I think the work from anywhere and the hire from anywhere is really propelling our recruiting from anywhere. And I think
there really is a need for a global presence. There will be a number of entrants who go into this market, but there needs to be.
That's right. So here's the interesting thing. We had a client that called us up, and we need recruiters here in the US and in Singapore. What can you do? And we're like, all right, done. Within 4 days, we were done. We had a team doing it. I don't know who else can do that on an on-demand basis other than us. So no one really has. And again, I don't mean to brag and boast, but I'm proud. No one in the recruiting world has what we have. No one does this on an on-demand, turn on, turn off basis, literally month to month. Client says, oh, I need these recruiters. And when it's done, it's over. They didn't like one recruiter, swap them in, swap them out. It's an on-demand platform.
Yeah.
I needed candidate tools, great pipeline tools, and we're delivering this all on a global basis.
And do with the traditional way of working it, just by a comparison with the UK, would you have found that agencies would be charging obviously a percentage of the final salary?
Yeah, and I hate that model.
Yeah. Hey, just
the answer is that, our biggest, so if you would say who's my biggest competitor, it's actually the in-house. It's really not recruiting agencies. It's really the in-house talent acquisition team at the company. So it's the startup CEO goes, I'll just post on ZipRecruiter and in LinkedIn and see what happens. And we're like, great, if you could do it on your own, go do it on your own. You're coming to us because you don't want to do it on your own. Fundamentally, there have always been two ways to hire. You either do it yourself or you hire someone to do it for you. And you did it yourself because you don't want to pay 30% of a salary or 20% of a salary to someone else. We're changing that model. We are absolutely changing that model. When I need a driver to take me from here to the airport, I don't hire a driver and onboard him and talk to him about his feelings and where he wants to be in year. I go to Uber, I get a driver, he comes, picks me up, takes me where I'm going. It's why isn't talent acquisition? And again, I don't mean to be I don't want to be cheeky, but why isn't talent acquisition as simple as that? Now, there are other nuances there, but finding the right person, that's what we do, right? By the way, if you needed legal counsel in a specific area that you're not a specialist in, you're not going to bring them on full time, right? And you're not going to pay someone, well, look, if you actually do this deal for me, then I'll pay you. No, you're good. Find the right person with the right skill set, come in, do my work for me. I'm going to pay you by the hour, by the project. And when it's over, thank you, go your own way.
By Simon.
That's right. Why? And talent acquisition should be that way too. No one should be expected to know everything. And when you go to any significant company now, they're hiring engineers, they're hiring back office people, they're hiring front office people, they're hiring sales people, they're hiring there's so many different types of people to hire. Why should one recruiter know everything? They shouldn't. They should manage a team. Why should an in-house counsel know everything? What he should know is exactly what he needs to know when to hire the next person.
So looking at this situation that we're in, there's a number of businesses in both, obviously, globally now, a lot of businesses that are struggling to fill vacancies. I think in the UK, the record number of vacancies, but the highest number it's been since records began. I think there's over a million. By comparison to US, it's probably small fry, but it's 1 million jobs unfilled.
Yeah.
And that seems to be an ongoing issue. I think I read a stat in the States that there's something like 1.1 million females who haven't come back into the work.
Right.
Are there underlying things that are going to?
Oh yeah. Look, if it was easy, we wouldn't be here, right? If it was simple, we wouldn't be here. And look, in the end, I became CEO. Let's go back to the beginning. I became CEO in May of 2020. I called the board meeting. I was chairman of the board. And I said, look, everybody, there are a series of stocks that are shut down stocks, right? Shut down companies, Peloton, DoorDash, your equivalent, Netflix. Grandma, grandpa are now going to have a subscription to Netflix. I said, when this is all finished, the job market is going to be an absolute disarray. And someone's going to have to be there to help companies rehire and help people get rehired. Yeah. And that's what I want to do. Yeah. I've been mission driven my whole life. And I said, I will stop what I'm doing and I'm going to come be the CEO. And the co-founder, Miles Jennings, shifted over to the right, on a seat. He's now the president of the company. And we've been on a mission to help companies find the talent they can't find, help people get rehired. And that's what we celebrate. We celebrate when people get hired. We celebrate the placements that we made. When I look at a success, we had Dentsu's one of our clients, the 5th largest advertising company on the planet. Using our tools and our platform and our on-demand recruiters, we delivered for them 128 hires in 90 days.
Wow.
Okay. Now that's exhausting and their project leaders didn't sleep. But the reality is we did 140 in 4 months. It was an amazing success, not because of the money we made, not because it proved out our tools. Those are all secondary. We got 128 people hired for a company in 90 days.
There's 128 conversations happening right there because at least. And hugely, but at least, you're going to have to contact these people. You have to have a conversation.
That's right.
The whole process.
And what a thrill. You're making a life, you're changing lives in a really immediate future. And at the end of the day here, we could all sit in the back of the car watching the job market and watching the open jobs and watching these issues. And we could say, how's this all going to happen? Or we could get in the front of it and go, look, guys, we're here to help. Yeah. So tell us your problem. Let's go help you. And by the way, our clients include large trucking companies, manufacturers, obviously the technology companies looking for highly skilled labor, but we're working with call centers, getting call center operators. We're doing everything possible to help these companies rehire their employees, find new employees, expand their businesses, et cetera.
We need you in the UK. We do need 1 or 2 truck drivers right now.
There you go. Yeah, we all do.
And a few other roles as well. So directly, what advice would you give to employers right now who are, let's say that they've got a gap, they've got some backfilling to do, they've got a bit of a crisis. What's the simple solution? I mean, obviously
you got to step your foot on the gas. You got to increase the numerator, and you got to increase the people working with the denominator. You got to increase the number of candidates that you're seeing. And don't kid yourself thinking that you're not going to have this problem if you're not having this problem. Real serious companies, clients of ours, really serious high-tech companies are going from a 2% churn to a 15% churn in employees. Crazy, crazy numbers. So you better keep your foot on the gas, constantly looking for what sort of talent do you need to be hiring. I would also suggest start building a bench. If you're a company where how do you get people out of college? Well, I like hiring people with 3 years of experience. Everybody likes hiring people with 3 years of experience. Why don't you be the company that gives them the first 3 years of experience? Create a program where you're taking people out of college or 1 year out of college and you're building a bench. Give them something simple to do. Build that bench and move them on. Recognize that your new generation of workers are not going to be there for more than 3 years. So consider that. In 2 years, they're going to be looking to leave. So give them something else to do. Move them. Sell them to a client of yours, right? Create a process where you're moving people around. They're going to want another experience. Make it happen for them.
That all speaks to me of having a very active and positive alumni.
That's right. So these are all like crazy. And I think the final thing is, I know we have these big issues today, right? 1.5 million women not in the workforce, 9 million people unemployed. I get it. Those will all be solved. We're going to solve those in the next 12 to 18 months. But this is not going away. This problem is here to stay. Yeah. And the problem is that we are now entering a job hopper economy. And if you ever take your foot off that's like saying, I don't need any more customers. Oh, I'm good with customers. I don't need any more customers. No one today would ever say, I don't need any more customers. I'm good. No one would ever say that. Or more importantly, that's a short-sighted thing to say is I don't need any more customers. Guess what? I think the candidate world, that supply chain of candidates, you have to examine your supply chain. I know we have supply chain crises around the planet. Your supply chain of candidates, you got to rethink your overall strategy.
Change the mindset.
That's right.
I know you've given me a good chunk of your time today, and I know you're a really busy guy. One final question I want to ask you, which is your advice, your tips. And I'm going to focus on somebody who's got a portfolio career, because you sort of look after 5 different roles as best I could determine from you. You're a busy man. What's your advice for somebody who's spread across those roles? And I know Recruiter.com is very, very key to you at the moment. You're really putting a lot of time into it. But how do you manage those other roles, and how do you keep the passion?
Okay. Yeah. No. So I am entirely focused at Recruiter.com right now. Recruiter.com keeps my passion. I'm involved in the product strategy and sales and market. I love what I'm doing now. The foundation really is, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, is a little bit more on the quieter side. So completely focused at Recruiter.com. I think the key really is to surround yourself with people that really take ownership of the challenges ahead of them, and to be very specific in the challenges, very tangible results for them. And I think society-wise, because we're not face-to-face, we are moving into a metrics-based society. And I've always been in sales. So sales has always been, no one ever said to a sales guy, well, how many hours did you put in last month? It's what did you close? So in sales, we've always been in in a metric-oriented society. And I think making sure that we give out the right metrics, still being human, but the right metrics so everyone knows what they need to do to get their jobs done. And then for me as CEO, really ensuring that I have a great team to really deliver on those things. And what I really like to do is figure out what a person's great at and make sure that they're in a role where they're going to be great. And this goes back to something we talked about before.
Yes.
Putting someone in a role where they're not great, that's not good for the long haul. That is not good for the long haul. And by the way, final thought for you is there's a difference between what you're great at and what you like to do, right? I like to fish. I'm not great at fishing, right? I present really well. I don't fish really well, but I actually like to fish. So it's really important to make sure that, you focus on what you're great at, and hopefully what you're great at is something that you like to do. But in the end, to drive success is not always doing the thing you like to do.
Yeah. And the self-awareness of knowing actually where
that's right.
and being able to compensate for that. Evan, Sohn, this has been a tremendous conversation. I know that you do have lots of commitments today, but the conversation has been fabulous because it shows a different mindset for something that has been challenging me for a number of years in roles previously. And I only hope now that we can start to see some real dial shifting in the way that recruitment works. And I would love to have another conversation with you about how that could happen in the UK.
Absolutely. So let's do this. Let's talk again in 90 days from now and see where we are in the world. How's that?
That sounds good to me.
Excellent. See you then, Dave. Thanks so much. Cheers.